Barely a few hours after ECOWAS placed a sanction on Mali, the country's military junta, led by Colonel Assimi Goita, has strongly condemned ECOWAS' decision and also described it as illegal. The military government also disclosed that it has closed its land borders with the neighboring countries that are ECOWAS members. Military spokesman Colonel Abdullahi Mega said in a televised statement on Monday that Mali had also recalled all its ambassadors to ECOWAS member countries. On Sunday, ECOWAS and the West African Economic and Monetary Union imposed a series of economic and diplomatic sanctions in response to Malian military leaders' desire to push back elections until 2025. The Authority of Heads of State and Government also said the proposal by the military junta to hang on to power was totally unacceptable. But a statement from the military government in Bamako accused the 15-member regional bloc of being exploited by extra-regional powers with ulterior motives. Now let's talk this through by speaking with the global affairs analyst Collins Nweke. Thank you so much for joining us on World Now. Let me begin by asking you about your reaction to the sanctions imposed on Mali by ECOWAS. Do you think that was the right action?
Happy New Year, first and foremost, Ibrahim. Nice to have you again this year. Obviously, I believe that what has played out with the military junta in Mali was expected because obviously they have been playing this cat and mouse, actually puncturing their own credibility. So it was a matter of when, not if, they were going to act in the irresponsible way that they have acted. And yes, the response of ECOWAS appears to be pretty well coordinated, but also very well targeted. What I find particularly interesting about the response of ECOWAS by the additional sanction is the fact that they tried as much as possible to limit the damage, the collateral damage that it will have on civilians. Because you would note that in closing the land border between ECOWAS and ECOWAS countries and Mali, they ensured that a number of essential products were excluded from the sanctions, so that there will be food supply, the man on the street, electricity, and so on and so forth, so that the man on the street will not be adversely affected. So yes, I think it was thought through, but also the fact that they have decided to maintain dialogue with them, okay, while they are closing the door on the one hand, they are leaving the door at the jar on the other hand, so that conversation and dialogue will continue to see if ultimately there will be, a headway. So yes, I think this was well thought through.
Well, it's good that you raised concerns about the man on the street, which, how it will affect the people on the street, because that's the essence of all things. It's for the people, for the Malians themselves. But the Malian military promised to restore peace to Mali, but with the way things are panning out, is this not looking more unlikely?
Well, anybody who didn't realize, especially when Colonel Goita actually staged a second de facto coup, anybody who didn't realize that they are playing with somebody with, a damaged credibility, somebody whose reputation is questionable in terms of putting the interests of the Malians before his own interest, would have observed from what he has done now that the man cannot be trusted. Come to think of it, yes, there is need for dialogue. He made that case at the initial stage that he wanted to have a sovereign national conference. That time was allowed. The conference took place, and at the end of it, the date proposed for the election to take place, which is was supposed to be barely a month ago, away, February 2022, and then he started shifting the goalpost again, saying that he needs 4-year transition period. For Christ's sake, what are you doing with 4 years? So you see, it's a very terrible error on his part, and I do hope that now that conversations are ongoing and they have been put under very, very severe, pressure, that they would yield and hand over power to a democratically elected government sooner rather than later, as they intend to do.
Well, some analysts are saying that the decisions made by ECOWAS is a serious blunder, making the community lose its relevance. Does it look to you like ECOWAS has the means to implement these sanctions?
Well, ECOWAS in many ways has its hands tied. There is definitely no question about that. Yes, if you look at the ramifications of the sanctions, yes, one might be led to believe that the reason they acted in the severe manner they have done now is because their reputation, their credibility is online. Also, if you consider the fact that they have that primary duty as enshrined in the ECOWAS Act to provide regional stability, and that looks to be highly under threat with what is unfolding in Mali, you find that yes, the the regional bloc ECOWAS appears to be in tatters, but of course. I do not believe that they could have acted in other ways than the way that they have acted now, considering what is in their hand.
Right.
What, like I said earlier, that I find pretty instructive is the fact that they have left the door open for dialogue. So what that means essentially is that if they find some iota of cooperation and seriousness on the part of the Goita military regime, it means that they might then begin to gradually ease the sanctions and then agree on a more reasonable...
Yeah, Mr. Collins, that's exactly the question I actually want to leave you with. I mean, I want to ask you before we end this conversation, basically whether is there any possibility of ECOWAS and the Mali, based on what you're thinking, the Mali military government meeting at a rallying point to find political solutions in place of the imposed sanctions?
It looks like that is what ECOWAS in its action has actually decided, that they need to do, leaving the door open, because obviously political solution is what has to work in this instance, and I believe that ECOWAS has not lost sight of that. Now, what I find a little bit on the downside in terms of the actions of ECOWAS is the withdrawal of, the ambassadors of ECOWAS, the 14 member states, from Mali. Now, one then questions how you could do that on one hand and still maintain the dialogue that, you have said you want to maintain. But let's hope that one way or the other, they will be able to, effectively have the dialogue, because yes, it is needed, and yes, political solution is the answer to the imbroglio.
Right. Global Affairs analyst Colonel Nweke, we'll continue to see how the situation in Mali actually pans out at the end of the day. Thank you very kindly for speaking with us on World Now.
My pleasure always. Thank you for having me.